Hey everyone, this is Jillian Sidoti. I'm here with my co-host Jeffrey Holst. This is the Last Life Ever podcast. And Jeff, tell us about today's interview.
Today we have an amazing interview. We're interviewing reality television star, the winner of season 2 of Alone, David McIntyre. He talks to us about amazing things. At least I hope he does. We'll find out right now.
Help me, my brother, can you lend me a hand as I walk through this land of confusion? If we give to each other, then there's nothing to take. Let's live life for the moment before it slips away.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
So Jillian and I are super excited. I think I've told you this already once, but I'm a big fan of the show. My in-laws are a big fan of the show. They kind of turned me on to it around season 2, actually, which is the season you're on. So for the people that don't know you and don't know what we're talking about, you were on a television show?
I was on season 2 of Alone on the History Channel. Basically, it's a wilderness survival competition where they take 10 people and they put you out in the wilderness, all spread out from each other. And there's no camera crew. You film it by yourself, basically living off the land, filming it by yourself. And last man standing wins. The last person standing, because there were women on the show as well.
So what, and are you guys all in the same area, or like, do they drop you in the same area, or how do they do that?
Well, we're all a couple miles apart, maybe 4 or 5 miles apart. You have no idea where the other contestants were dropped. It's a very solitary experience. You are literally alone. They come out every 7 to 10 days to do a quick medical check and recover your footage and restock your batteries. But you have, other than that brief 15-minute visit every week or so, there's no contact with the outside world.
So I wondered about that, actually, because I've watched most of the show. How long they stay? So they only stay for like 15 minutes.
It's brief. That first one, that it's kind of a strange dynamic because you've been with these people for a while. I mean, we were together all at boot camp for a week in New York, and then we had a week-long orientation on Vancouver Island before we hit the bush. And you're friends with all these people, and they show up for that first media medical visit, and it's very abrupt. They're not there to socialize with you. They basically do the same thing every time. They ask you the questions they need to ask. You interact with them briefly, and then they're gone. And it kind of sets you back. It's like you're looking forward to seeing people, and all of a sudden you realize, okay, you're not getting anything socially out of this encounter at all.
So they're not bringing you letters from home or anything like that at that point.
No, there's no back rubbing barbecue on the beach when the cameras are off. Yeah. None of that.
Yeah. So it's because that's what you always wonder with these reality shows is like what's really going on behind the scenes.
Right.
I think there's been controversy with some of the other shows where people have been staying in hotels and stuff like that. That's not happening on your show. On the show
no. Yeah. The only thing going on behind the scenes is the suffering you didn't get to see.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But wait a minute. I have so many questions because they're only coming to you every 7 to 10 days. And do you lose track of time, or are you keeping track of time?
I did. I told myself I was going to, I had a stick that I was cutting notches in, and I lose track because you're doing the same things in the same weather every day. And I would seriously lose track of what day it was. So every time they'd come, I'd ask them what day it was, and I'd run back and make the correct number of notches on my stick and then forget.
How many days is it? How many days is the total time that you're out there?
It lasts until the last person taps out. You can leave any time. You have a satellite phone, and you can call them when you're done. You just call them on the phone and say, "Look, I'm officially tapping out," and they'll come out and get you. Usually, if not then, as soon as they physically can, they'll get there. And the last person standing wins $500,000. So you don't want to tap. You've got this opportunity to do it, and you have no idea if anyone else is tapped out. you have no idea, how many people are left out there.
Because they don't tell you that stuff, right?
No, there's there's no cannon that booms and shines your face in the sky. It's not.
no smoke signal.
No, you have no idea.
So serious question. Did you consider making like a signal to the other people to like smoke signals to try to like communicate with other people that are 2 miles away or whatever?
No, there's really no way to do that. You have no idea where they are. I kind of deduced as it goes on, like the med check boat would come in to my cove. Sometimes it would come in, from the south side and then head out to the north. And other times it would come in from the north. And after a while, it stopped coming in from the north altogether. So I realized, okay, whoever was north of me is gone, because they're never coming in and they're never going that way when they leave me, and they're never coming from that direction. So whoever was there is gone. Another time, my satellite phone died, and I had to get a new one. And they brought out a new one, and they had. All of my gear had a little piece of tape on the back, and I was in zone number 3, so all my gear had this little, tape with the number 3 on it. And when they gave me the new phone, they didn't peel the old one off. So I got this satellite phone. It has an 8 on the back. I'm figuring, okay, this was somebody else's phone they're giving me. So whoever was in zone 8 is now gone. And I had no idea who that might have been, but.
So at that point, you knew there was at least one person gone, but there could still be 8 other people besides yourself, right?
Right. You have no clue. And I preferred to think that everybody was still out there and I was still competing against all those people. I needed that mental pressure. And also these are your friends, and you don't want to think about them having a bad time or getting injured or, going home. And we know that is the case. I mean, Mary Kate hit her hand with an axe, severed a tendon in her hand. You don't want to think about that kind of thing.
Right. Apparently she's okay-ish now, right? Because I saw the end.
Yeah, she's lost some function. She can still make a fist, but she can't. It was get on the camera. It was this tendon up on here on the back of her hand, and she can't lift her thumb this way. She can't do that.
Are you still friends with Mary Kate and all of the contestants? Or?
We all keep in touch. Yeah, we all have a Facebook group we talk on, and even people from the other seasons. They all get invited in when their season comes up. So there's a lot of us that chat on there, keep in touch.
Has there anybody who's been like psychologically damaged from this experience? Like I see that being like, I gotta survive, and then these people show up and they don't talk to you. I can see that.
You have to be kind of psychologically damaged to do it in the first place. I mean, they gave us a psychological evaluation at boot camp, and I remember saying, I hope they're comparing us to each other, not to some baseline of what normal people are, but psychological damage. Okay, here's the best way I can put it. I went back to Desolation Cove a year and a half after the show had aired, and I was given the opportunity to go up there. It was me, Nicole, Larry, and Alan Kay from season 1. We all went back because we had all done Alone up on Vancouver Island, and they took me out to Wade Daly, the guy who drove the rescue boat, took me out to Desolation Cove, and I was pumped. I mean, I was just like, couldn't believe I was back. You know what I mean? I'm just super excited on the boat, and they dropped me off on the beach there. And when he turned around, that was the same boat they would come in for the med checks, and when that boat turned around and roared out of the cove, I had like a PTSD reaction to it. It really.
So
I remember looking at this log where I remember being passed out on that log, and that was the thing that hit me. It's like all the pain of the event came back at once, and I had to deal with it because it looked just like drop day. It looked like just like the first day I dropped off there in the cove, and it was like my body was just reacting to the fear of having to do it all over again and knowing how much pain was involved in it. It's like the big wind kind of wiped out the pain that was involved, and wow. I had a severe reaction, probably about 20-30 minutes to get under control, and then really enjoy being there again.
How long did you stay that time when you went back?
I was just there I was there for a week on Vancouver Island. I got to see some of the other sites where people had been, and I think I spent 2 days back. I didn't spend the night in the cove. I mean, they came back and picked me up, but I spent 2 days out there. Just it was good for me. It was like closure. It was.
Because you ended really abruptly. I mean, for the people that haven't seen the show, full disclosure, you actually won your season, right? Like season 2, you stayed out 62 days, I think.
66 days.
66 days. Okay, so 66 days by yourself, with only, and that whole time only a half a dozen times or so you saw somebody else, and then only for 10 minutes at a time.
Right, it's that brief medical visits. But it's like, for me, it was like my head was still in the game at the end there. I wasn't ready to tap out, but it hurt. You know what I mean? It was very painful physically and mentally, emotionally. And of course, you're on this super low calorie diet. At the end, I was actually regaining lost weight. I was, to me, that's like the thing I'm most proud of, is I actually turned the corner on starvation there. But it was a tenuous hold. I mean, if a week worth of bad weather would have changed that, you know. So I was living hand to mouth, and I was successfully living in the Cove there, and everything in me was saying, you know, stay here, stay, don't go home, don't tap out. I wasn't hovering over the button or anything, but I was like, I was doing it. I had my head in the game, and all of a sudden they tell you, okay, you're out of here.
And it was getting late in the season too, right? I mean, were winters approaching at that point?
Yeah, that was. They pulled me out the day before Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And we had dropped off in September, mid-September, so it was like September, October, November, the end of November, you know, heading into December, and all of a sudden they just pulled me out, and it was very jarring. There was no mental shutdown, so going back for me really helped me do that. You know, to go back there and reconcile all that and see it again, because I own that Cove. To me, that's you know, I know it's Canadian territory and all that, but that is, you know, Dave McIntyre's Cove.
That's fantastic. Now, how did you get into this in the first place? Had you tried out for any other Survivor type shows, or was this the first one? Tell us about that.
Actually, it wasn't the first. I started getting into wilderness survival when I was about 15 years old. My brother and I would go out on the Appalachian Mountains in Pennsylvania every weekend, and we made every mistake you could possibly make. And to me, it just lit a fire under me to learn how to operate by yourself in a wilderness environment and mitigate all those risks and learn the skills necessary. To me, that's the thing that interested me the most about being in the wilderness. I did that for, you know, years. And then when I was, I got married in '89, and that next year, my wife and I went to Brazil for 2 years as short-term missionaries. I was there teaching missionary kids, and just fell in love with Brazil. We later went back in 1995. We candidated to be full-time missionaries there, which was a career change for me, and I had to become an ordained Baptist pastor and all that, and raised our support. And 1999, we went back full time, and that was a urban church plant, working in the urban jungle. And I thought I was giving up the wilderness to do that, and come to find out, just you drive an hour and a half outside of Belo Horizonte, Brazil, and you were in the most beautiful, pristine wilderness you can imagine. And it just reignited when I got to Brazil, just my love for the wilderness and learning wilderness survival in that whole new environment. And then taking out kids as a wilderness survival ministry. I founded the Perardua Wilderness Ministry, where I was taking inner city kids on guided trips in the jungle, teaching them wilderness survival, and using that as a springboard for spiritual development, leadership development.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah, so 2008, the U.S. dollar collapsed down there, and I formed the Bushmaster Survival School with a friend of mine, Giuliano Toniolo, and we started opening that up for paying customers. So I had people from all the different branches of the Brazilian military, police, their version of the FBI, you know, taking this course privately. It wasn't with those organizations, but people from those organizations were in the course. College professors, we had an actor take the course. It was great, you know, using all those skills. I remember the first time we had paying customers out there, Juliana were looking at each other like, we're getting paid to do this. This is so cool, you know. But yeah, that's where it came from. And then Alone picked up on my YouTube channel and asked me to apply for the show.
Okay, so they found you. So you didn't have like, because a lot of times, I mean, I actually get casting calls because a long time ago I tried out for a reality show, and now I get these emails constantly like, you should try out for this, you should, and I never even respond to any of them. Well, but they're not. I'm just on a mailing list. Like, they're not finding me. Finding you is pretty cool.
Well, we had a casting call. Giuliano and I were asked to try out for a show in Brazil. It was their version of Dual Survival with the Discovery Channel. And I got right up there in the very top of their calls between me and another guy, and they went with the other guy. So it wasn't my first rodeo with TV people. And when Alone came along, I figured, hey, you know, why not? It looks like a cool show. It looks like they're going to do it for real. You know what I mean? It's other shows, they're scripted. They do things where they'll use multiple locations, and you've got this camera crew following you around all the time. And on this one Alone, it was like, this is the real deal. They are putting people out there, and it's all self-documented. I mean, I probably shot 5 to 6 hours of footage, raw footage a day out there, and there is no one there. And the first thing they tell you at boot camp, after you sign the non-disclosure agreement, they pull back the curtain and tell you all about it. And they're like, if you think that there's some gimmick to this show where you're going to have support in some form, just forget about it. Walk now. Okay. Because it is absolutely real. And it was.
Yeah, it's very authentic feeling, right? I mean, I'm sure they're editing the footage because you're filming six hours a day, and there's like 10 episodes or something, and they're an hour long.
Episodes. Yeah, you see me for probably like an hour.
Right, out of the whole
out of all that
66 days, right? And so you would have filmed, literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage during that time. But so here's a question for you. So like, you decide to go out there, and you start meeting all these people. There must be some kind of like location-based training though, because I hear people talking about specific things they're allowed to do and not allowed to do. I mean, obviously you don't know what you can and can't do before you get to Vancouver Island. So there's that, but then there's also like the training on the cameras, I think. So how long did that process take?
You have some of that at boot camp. They took 20 people. 3,500 people applied for the show on season 2, and they took 20 people out to boot camp in New York, where you meet, you go through all the interviews and physical and turn your head and cough and all that stuff. And there's some camera aptitude. They want to see how well you handle the cameras there. But then when you get to orientation on Vancouver Island, there was a week-long process where we went every day for camera training. They run you through the safety system, the communication systems. The Canadian Fish and Game people came and talked to us and told us what we were allowed and not allowed to do. We had a very, I don't know how much I can share about all those different things, but we had a very liberal license to work in salt water. Basically anything we wanted to do in salt water, any method, any species we could take within limits. I mean, we couldn't kill seals and otters and things like that, but in the saltwater, we had a lot of liberty to do all the things that we normally would do in a survival situation. On land, it was a little more restrictive. We had to obey the British Columbia Fish and Game laws. Basically, I knew I was going to get all my food out of the ocean anyway, so I didn't really bother with much of that on the land. Basically eating edible plants and things on land, but I didn't go after any terrestrial animals at all.
So what's some of the people on some of the episodes they've shown them eating like slugs and stuff like that. What do you think the worst thing that you had to capture and eat
I can tell you straight up. There was a species of limpet there called a keyhole limpet, which looks like a little volcano. It's got like a little volcano with a hole in the top, and they have this big meaty skirt that goes out underneath it, and they're delicious. They taste like a cross between clam and a crab. And they're if you like seafood, they're
I do like seafood, so maybe it'd be okay, but it just all sounds so strange.
Okay, it's like a sweet clam. Well, one day on the moon tide, that when the sun and the moon are in alignment, you get a really high tide, then a really low tide. And I wasn't quite prepared for that. And I remember going out, I was looking for mussels, and all the bivalve shellfish had red tide poisoning. We couldn't eat them, but we could use them for bait. So I was going to bait a box trap I had made. And I run out there, and there's like an island and a reef there, and all the land around the island was just tide pools because the tide was so far out. And those keyhole limpets, they live down below the line of the surf. So you don't really find them unless it's dead low tide. You find them like right where the surf is hitting. But I could walk around. I caught 32 of these things, and they're just delicious. So stupid me. I took them all home and I cooked them. I should have taken like 20 of them and put them in a tide pool where I'd have access and I could use those as an ongoing resource. But I was just so starving. I threw them all in the pot and I cooked them all up. And I'm eating them, I'm in the dark, I got my headlamp on, I'm eating these things, and I picked one of them up, and there's like this white thing sticking out of the shell. And I look at it, and it's like a worm, and it's got all these legs and everything, and I pulled it out, and it's like there's a parasite in this thing. I'm like, I've eaten like 10 of these things already. I'm thinking, okay, it's got to be a one-off. And I look in the pot with the headlamp, and there's like 10 of these worms floating in the water. So I started pulling them out, and every last one of these keyhole limpets had one of these worms wrapped around itself. And I'd been eating them. So come to find out when I come back, I looked that up, and it's a thing called a scale worm. And what they do is it's not a parasite. It's a symbiotic relationship where that scale worm lives inside the shell, and he protects. If anything attacks the limpet, he bites it, okay? And he rides around inside that shell. And, I've been eating them. So, scale worms,
that's the worst.
Entirely edible, but it's like you're eating a little alien from some other planet.
So you stopped eating at that point, even though you were starving. You're like, I'm not eating any more of these, or did you?
I ate every last one of them.
Yeah, I figured you might have.
I pulled the scale worms out. I didn't eat them, but I ate every last one of them. But eating 32 of them in one sitting was just too much, and I did not eat another keyhole limpet my entire time out there. after that, I couldn't bear just the last one. I was just gagging on it, trying to get it down. And with those scale worms, it kind of turned me off to them. But at that point, I was already getting fish and crabs and other things. I didn't have to go after the limpets so much.
Yeah. So when you first arrived, why don't we start there? We'll jump back to that. So you first arrived Vancouver Island. I'm not, but at your cove specifically, right. And the boat leaves. Like, what's going through your head that moment?
Well, your first priorities are shelter, fire, and water. That's what allows you to create stability in a survival situation. If I have a roof over my head, a dry place to sleep, a fire in front of me with a pot of boiling water, I'm just camping at that point. Okay, so that's the stability that allows you to stay in a place. It allows you to thermoregulate and hydrate. So my first priority was shelter, fire, and water, and I had all those on my first day. I found a stream coming down, through the cove, trickling. It would disappear in the beach. It would just kind of trickle out of the forest. So I had fresh water, firewood. I found a location to put up an improvised, provisional shelter. You don't want to build your permanent shelter until you know what the weather does, and it was a good thing because that first week we got a storm, like 65-mile-an-hour winds, and the entire forest flooded. I had picked out 4 locations for a shelter, and only one of them was out of water. So that was fortunate. I hadn't started building anywhere. Shelter, fire, and water. That's your first priority, and then you have to solve the food problem. You can last about 3 weeks to a month on your body reserves, and if you don't have the food problem solved by then, you probably won't. So it was a matter of, I had never set foot in that environment in my life other than, a week before the short orientation. My game plan going in was to build a certain type of shelter. Which required a lot of poles and things, kind of like a solid lean-to in the back with a bush bed. And I was going to use my tarp in the front like a big shell. And I got there in my forest, and my trees were just enormous. It was like this old growth hemlock and cedar, and these trees are like 10 foot in diameter. And there's just no poles in the forest. I had enough of them to make a A-frame type shelter with my tarp and make the bush bed in the back. I had a bed that was about 18 inches off the ground, about 9 feet long and 3 feet wide, covered with a foot thick hemlock mattress, which I slept really well out there. But yeah, that was the priority, is then learning the land and patterning the wildlife and figuring out what's there. And in the beginning, I couldn't find any fish. I saw no fish whatsoever all the way around the reef. I figured out I could get out on the reef at dead low tide, and got into good fishing out there. But you're also using a lot of methods which are technically illegal most of the time, like gill netting. Here in Michigan, if you put in a gill net, it's major bad. And I had a gill net there, but I'd never used one before, so it was a learning curve on that. Like trot lines and things where you have a line with multiple hooks on it. Those are market fishing techniques and poaching techniques, which are normally not allowed in anywhere that's governed by sport fishing, but we were allowed to use those things. So there was kind of a learning curve there. Basically, the idea was to get as much passive fishing infrastructure up as I possibly could, and then actively fish after that. And I found out in short order that my cove was just not conducive to any passive fishing methods. There was just so much debris in the water, and logs would come in and circulate around my cove, tearing down all my nets. And I lost 7 fish hooks in the first 2 weeks because the bulk kelp was ripping out all my set lines. I just lose them, and I only had 25 hooks to begin with, so I couldn't afford to lose them at that rate. It was like,
can we talk about that for 1 second, actually?
Sure.
So since I've seen the show, I know that each contestant's allowed to pick like 10 items or something, right? And one of the items you can pick is fish hooks. Right. You obviously pick that, and it's limited to 25. I know that because they've said that on several of the shows. But like, how do you make those decisions about like what you're gonna take? I mean, it seems like that would be a hard thing to do.
I focused mainly on ways to gather food, like the gill net. Watching season 1 kind of informed my decision making on that obviously I'm going to be living out of the ocean, so taking a gill net and taking fish hooks, that's a no-brainer. I wanted tools that I could make other things with, like an axe, saw, and a knife, and then staying warm with my sleeping bag and my bivy bag, which was I don't know if anyone else took a bivy, but that saved my butt totally. Kept my sleeping bag from getting drenched on one occasion, but it was like a waterproof cover for the sleeping bag. And I knew I'm in an environment that gets 12 feet of rain a year. I don't want my bag to get soaked at any point. So I took that 2-quart pot, a ferro rod for making fire. And then my 10th item was I substituted one item of gear for 5 pounds of pemmican, which was on the list of things we could do. So that was like my emergency food reserve, was 5 pounds of pemmican.
Wow.
Did you end up tapping into the emergency food reserve?
Yeah. I remember at one point I had gone 96 hours, 4 days without a bite to eat, just drinking water. And I was circling the drain, because it's not like it's not like a hunger strike where you're laying in bed. You're working 12-hour days without eating, so it's debilitating. And I remember I broke down. That was the first time I broke down and ate some of the pemmican. I cut out a 1/6 pound portion of it and made like soup with bulk help and that pemmican. And not too proud to admit, I cried the first bite of that. It brought me to tears, because I knew what it was like to be a starving person and being given a bowl of food. I mean, something so simple.
Wow.
That I was starving to death. If you keep up at this, you're going to die of starvation. You're just not facing hunger. You're facing actual starvation. And they'll pull you if you get below a certain body mass index. But, that's the point at which your body starts consuming organs for energy, and you don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a very strict rationing system. After that, I figured, okay, this is my emergency survival rations, and 48 hours constitutes an emergency. So if I had been skunked, I got no food for 2 complete days, I would break that fast with the 1/6 pound portion of the pemmican. And I actually came home with 2 1/6 pounds of it left. So when they pulled me out, I hadn't gone more than 24 hours without an actual meal from the Cove in a long time.
When you finally did get pulled out, besides the $500,000, did you come back with anything else? Diseases, medical issues?
No, I came out of it. Man, I remember the first time I hadn't seen my own body in like a month, because it's 35 degrees and raining out there. You're not going to sit down and get a shower, So I get to the cabin and I stripped off all those winter clothes, and I looked at myself and like, dude, what did you do to yourself? You could see the bones in my chest, and I could circle my thigh at the top of my leg with my.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd lost my maximum weight loss was about week 5, I think, where I had lost 35 pounds. I went out at 190. I got down to 195. I got down to 160. And then by the end of it, I was up to like 165. I was regaining some of that lost weight, but.
That's actually really impressive that you were able to get to the point where you really were surviving, right? I mean, you could have stayed quite a bit longer at that point. Yeah,
it was pretty tenuous. I mean, I had no food in store other than the pemmican and bulk help. I had a lot of bulk help and ate a lot of that. It was like one of my staple foods. But everything I caught during the day, I ate that night. It was I never had any stock of food laid away that I got from the Cove. Bad weather would have changed that. There were days where they're so stormy, you just pretty much lay in your bed, just staying warm and not burning energy. And if that had happened, I would have had to tuck into that pemmican. I had 13 meals of that. So people say, how long could you have lasted? I got pulled out on day 66, and I had 13 of those 1/6 pound meals left of the pemmican, which would have brought me up to about day 80. So I think confidently I could have stayed but to day 80 without hedging my bet on that. I can honestly say I would have been there till day 80 at least. After that, I don't know. I know psychologically it was very difficult for me to think about missing Thanksgiving, because you got this vision of everything you need right there in one room, your entire family sitting around a table just loaded with food, and just thinking about that was like torture. And knowing, okay, I'm not going to have that.
Did you get really close to quitting?
No,
you never were close.
I never once hovered over the button. I knew in my heart of hearts, I knew I was going out of there on a backboard. I knew one of these days I'm going to get injured. I'm going to see one of my bones sticking out of my leg or something and realize, okay, it's all done. And they're going to pull me out. I knew I was leaving with an injury. That's what I felt like. And the day that I won, that was the first thought that went through my head. Number one is like, I can stop. I'm done. I can stop. And then I'm not injured. Mm-hmm. And just the relief flooding over me. I didn't even think about the money. That was like later. They're like, hey, let's have a conversation about the big win. And I'm like, yeah, all right. Yeah, I guess I did win a lot of money here.
Right.
To me, it was like, I'm coming home healthy. I get to see my daughter standing right there, and I don't have any broken bones.
Yeah, and that scene, honestly, I cried for you watching that. I imagine you'd probably cry every time you watch it. If you, because I don't know, Jillian, you probably haven't seen this, but you know, what they do a lot of times is they'll surprise the person. They come back like they're doing a medical check essentially. And then they start the medical check, and then one of their significant family members or close friends will walk up behind them and tell them that they won. And it's just this very emotional scene, because when you see somebody going through that, you're like, wow, they had literally no idea 1 second ago that they're going home right now.
Yeah, I had no clue. I'm not, that morning, I knew they were coming out for a medical check. And that morning, I remember thinking, we're at day 66, you know, and the season 1 ended on day 56. So we're already 10 days beyond the end of season 1. So it's like, it's only me and a couple other people out here for sure. You know, we're winding down. And I thought, if I win this thing, it'll probably be on a med check day. And when that idea kind of took root, and I started going off like a rocket in the morning, I thought, whoa, slow your roll here. Because if they just turn around and drive out of the cove like every other time, you're going to circle the drain and just emotionally die. So I thought, okay, no, that's not going to happen today. I think it's normal. Then they got there, and there was like one extra cameraman, and it kind of threw me off for a second. And they said, no, we want to do an interview with you back at your shelter. And then I saw the other camera guy get off, and he had a dry bag full of batteries, went back to my shelter to restock it. So I'm like, all right, I'm here for at least another week. They're planning on me filming all week, and that, you know, they're restocking me with batteries. And so to me, that made total sense. And it took me back to the shelter, and I started, you know, it was Zach Green, the producer, who's asking me this list of questions off a clipboard, and it's making real sense, because it's like, okay, these guys really do watch my footage, because they were talking about things I had filmed. And he ran out of decent questions. It's like, Erin took a long time to get up there. You know, they had to switch her from another boat and bring her into the cove and get her to walk up behind my shelter. And he ran out of questions. And then Sean Cable, the other camera guy, he starts asking me questions. I'm like, dude, you guys, in my head, I'm like, you got here right at high tide. The tide's going down. If I don't get out and fish, I'm going to go hungry tonight. You know, let's wrap it up. You know, and outside, I'm trying to be polite because I'm on camera, you know, and they're asking me all these questions and stuff. And then I saw Zach, he broke eye contact with me and looked over my shoulder down the trail. And I turned, and my daughter was standing there. And it's a surreal moment. I have no other moment like that in my life. That it was just amazing. I mean, the relief, and to be able, you know, that Erin was actually there in my camp. She didn't have to say anything. It's like, I know, I won this thing. And yeah, so it was, yeah, very emotional.
Yeah, I'm getting teary-eyed already right now. Just hearing you talk about it. It's such a well done show, and your season in particular, you were really great. And I mean, so I'm super happy that you came here. But we've been already 30 minutes, and I don't want to shortchange your story. So your whole life isn't just, you know, alone. You do other stuff, right? Besides alone. Like I read on your website that you are a novelist. That's pretty cool. What can you tell us about that? Go! That was a great interview.
It was.
It really was.
I can't even believe that. It was funny because I just thought we were going to ask him about survival skills and how he survived and where he learned it, and it just turned into a completely different conversation that I could have talked to him for 2-3 hours.
And we did in fact talk to him for a full hour, which we're going to release the second part at some later date. But the first part we talked mainly about his experience on the TV show Lost and sort of how he got into that. What I found fascinating was that they found him, right? Yeah, that's amazing. I would like to be on a reality TV show. So if anyone's out there, you know, looking for that, they can find me, and then I'll be on the reality TV show.
Jeff.
Yes.
You and I should go on Amazing Race together.
We should do that. Let's try out for Amazing Race.
We will try out for Amazing Race. But
is that wait. Before we do that though, just to be clear, is this like we're actually going to try out for Amazing Race, or are we going to pretend to try out, kind of like you pretended to do the Christina Aguilera masterclass?
Okay, Jeff. We should do Amazing.
Yeah, every week we have a new thing we're going to do. Jillian, we should set a world record.
I know.
Oh, wait, that was last week. Sorry, I got the wrong episode there. My mistake. So
I think we should definitely consider doing Amazing Race. However, I'm going to say that and I probably shouldn't say this publicly or otherwise, because then it's going to be a thing, right? But I don't like rodents. Rodents are not my thing.
So I've never actually watched Amazing Race, so I don't know why that matters, because it's not Fear Factor. But we should not try out for Fear Factor.
No, we're not going to try out for Fear Factor, but the few episodes,
we should not try out for that. I believe this is actually the second time since we've had a podcast that you've suggested you were going to try out for a reality television show.
All right, I'm still going to try out for the other one. I just have to work on that a little bit.
Yeah, by doing your masterclass.
I have to do do the masterclass. I'm going to do the Christina Aguilera masterclass where I'm going to learn how to sing. But let's get back to Dave.
So Dave is an amazing guy. So Dave was a missionary for 15 years in Brazil. Actually, 2 different times in Brazil. Speaks fluent Portuguese. Lived in Brazil that time. And while he was there, they had some funding issues. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but he ended up having to start a wilderness survival school for local people in Brazil. And he would take them out into the Amazon rainforest and teach them how to survive on their own in the rainforest. And then he started a YouTube channel where they did wilderness survival type skills, and the people from Alone actually reached out to him to get him on the show. So the show Alone, amazing, right? I mean, and by the way, we don't really have to recap the episode, because presumably by the time people get to this point, they've actually just watched the episode. But I do want to tell you, I thought it was amazing. I'm fascinated by the whole thing. I feel like Jillian should be on Alone.
No. I said I would go on Amazing Race. I'm not going on Alone. No.
Well, I mean, I feel like Alone is better than Naked and Afraid.
Oh, I wouldn't go on that.
I'm definitely not gonna.
I don't like being naked in the shower. There's no way I'm going on Naked and Afraid.
Yeah, I'm not doing either of them. Just to be clear, listen. Dave is an impressive guy. He told me I could survive for about 20 to 30 days in the wild on my own, because that's how long it takes to starve to death. I'm just assuming I would find zero food if I was in the wild. So, and I'm a little on the fat side, so I'd probably make it 30 days.
Oh my God.
How long would you make it, Jillian?
Not long. I wouldn't make it long. I don't know how to hunt. I mean, remember what Dave said is that he started doing this when he was 15 and now he's a grandfather. So
true.
Keep that in mind.
I literally almost cried, by the way, like when he was describing the end of the show. Like I wasn't joking. Like I actually almost cried, and I saw the end of the show. By the way, if people are listening to this and they enjoyed listening to Dave's story, I would highly recommend going back and watching Alone. It's a little bit tricky to get season 2 because they're in season 6 or something now. So you have to buy it like on Google or Amazon or something, but it's not very expensive. I think it's like $10. So I would buy it if I was you and watch it.
It's absolutely fascinating, though. And I thought his story was amazing. And I can't wait to release not just this episode, but the second episode that we created with him, which talks about a totally different subject. And I want to kind of.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I don't mind sort of foreshadowing. So if you're listening to this, say like, sometime in the future for us, obviously in the present for you, then maybe the second episode's already out. You might just check for that. It'll probably be called something like Dave's back on Last Life Ever, or something along those lines. It shouldn't be too hard to figure out. We'll even try to link it in the show notes once it's out.
It was really a great
yeah interview. I mean, we were talking about so Dave, after he won Alone, he used some of the money to help his family and stuff. We didn't really get into what he did with the money, but I mean, $500,000 has got to be life-changing,
pretty significant,
especially for
a missionary.
Someone who's worked their entire career in the mission field. And I gotta believe that even when he was doing wilderness training stuff, that probably wasn't super lucrative work.
No,
I am just guessing that that's not something you do to get rich. It's something you do because you're following your life's passion, which is exactly why he was a great guest to have. But what he's doing now, also following his life's passion, is he's writing not 1 but 6 novels simultaneously. And the concept is fascinating. So when you watch the second episode, you can find out all about that.
Right. And look, I want to leave it there. I have a great joke, so I really want to tell my joke.
Okay.
And
I've prepared nothing, but I'll think of something.
Okay. I want to tell my joke because, Dave is a missionary, Christian missionary, and he survived in the wild. And this little joke incorporates both. A Christian was hiking in the wilderness. He stumbles upon a bear. The bear starts chasing him. The Christian is now concerned. He gets on one knee and says, "Lord, turn this bear into a Christian." The bear creeps up closer and closer, and it gets on one knee and says, "Lord, thank you so much for this meal I'm about to receive."
Yeah, I mean, that's I kind of saw that coming, and I got to be honest with you, that was the kind of joke that would have been delivered better if you had actually memorized it rather than read it. Like for example, watch this. All right, so there's this Christian and he's lost in the wilderness, right? And he's just kind of wandering around, and then all of a sudden he comes upon a bear, and he's like, "Oh man, there's the bear!" So he starts to walk away, subtly strolling away from a bear, like you do when you see a bear. I think Dave would admit that leaving the scene of a bear is a good idea. Anyway, the bear starts chasing him, right? This. By the way, this is my joke, just to be clear. The bear's chasing him, and he's like, "Oh, what do I do?" So he stops and he starts praying. He's like, "God, please, God, you have to save me. Please turn this bear into a Christian." And God's like, "Sure, no problem." And the bear gets down on one knee and is like, "Thank you for this meal." That's how you tell that joke. And that's why you should never try to steal my joke. I know I told you that joke earlier and you just read it back to me and it wasn't very funny. So this is The Last Life Ever. My name is Jeffrey Halls. This is my partner, Jillian Sidoti. And we're hoping that you, what, Jillian? What are we hoping?
Live the best version of your last life ever. Jeff's a liar. Bye.